There are two things that I love playing up: the guitar neck and my questionable Latin American heritage every time Cinco de Mayo comes around. But today we're talking about playing up the guitar neck. This is going to be, I think, a really interesting lesson that's going to combine shapes, a little bit of music theory, just the right amount of music theory to get you to kind of play in a different spot on the neck in a visual way that you'll never ever forget. All right? So we're going to do this in the key of E. Generally, I do things in G or C because they're a little more common, but there's a reason I want to do this in the key of E, because we have an open E string on the low and high end in a standard tune guitar, all right? Now, you've probably heard ad nauseum about people playing the major scale and how that helps you out. I think this is like the number one reason to learn the major scale as intervals, basically just spaces, whole steps or half steps. Whole step being 2 frets, half step being 1 step, okay? You've heard this before. I know you know it. We have whole, half, whole, half, okay? So now if we think of these as fret numbers starting on an E, we go whole step to 2, another whole step to 4, half step, 5, whole step 7, whole step 9, whole step 11, whole step 12. Now, there's something that just sounds right. Even if you've never tried playing scales on a guitar before, this sounds right. If any of these notes are wrong, you'll hear it. Right? And it just doesn't sound right even if you're playing the notes cleanly. So, very important to remember whole, half, whole, half. It's basically 2 whole steps, a half, then 3 whole steps and a half, right? So we can talk about the names of the notes: E, F sharp, G sharp, A, B, C sharp, D sharp, E. But I think the interval is important, more important than the notes even, because then if you do get into other keys, like the key of G, whole, half, whole, half, right? Once you have the interval down, you can move it all over the place. Now, what I think is really, really slept on, just in guitar teaching, guitar playing in general, wish I would have started this sooner, is thinking of that same thing, but starting backwards. So if we have the high E string, it's the exact same thing, right? High E string and low E string will just give you the same notes at a different pitch. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about the relationship between a root note and its fifth, okay? So, beginning of this lesson, jumping around, but this is all going to tie together really, really soon. Anytime you play a power chord, right? Like you play E power chord, open E to A, you're playing a root note and its fifth. Okay, what that means is if you go 5 notes away in the major scale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you get root, fifth. Those two are super connected, and on a guitar, we have the option to play them on different strings that make a shape, right? Like a power chord. So anytime you play E power chord, F sharp power chord, G sharp, A, B, C sharp, D sharp. Does that sound totally right? E, okay? So, any single one of these notes, with the exception of that last one, becomes a power chord just by adding its fifth, okay? That's what's special about that 7th note is, if I add the 5th here, see I get an A sharp, but A is a note in the key that we're using. So this has a flat 5, a diminished quality to this chord, a root note and a flat 5, okay? That's going to be important in just a second. But we can play through the major scale as single notes or as power chords. Okay, and again, that 7th note, we just put a little sauce on it, you just go back a fret, okay? Now, what I think is very underrated is using this in a maybe guitar solo context higher up the neck, which is what we're going to talk about. But we're going to do it backwards, all right? Most of the time when we talk about power chords, it's a root note, and then you go maybe down a string, 2 frets higher, and that gives you a power chord, right? That shape, that cool shape that you can get into that you can start playing songs instantly. Now, we can use that same logic, but if we start on the high E string, what we notice is when you go backwards, E to B, right? E to B, we have the 5th below the root note, okay? Just like if you were playing, like let's say if I want to play the A major scale, right? I'd start on the A string and go whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. I don't even need to know the names of the notes. I just know that this formula will give me the A major scale. I can play the power chord like this. Open A, 2D, 2A, 4D, right? Those are all my power chords in the key of A. But now since we're on not the lowest string, we can actually get the fifth below, and then now I can get an E underneath it. So now, if I were to play this same chord, an A and an E, open A, 2D, I can do it with the fifth below with the open string right next to it, okay? Now the beautiful thing about this, conceptually, it's very easy to understand with power chords on the lower register of the guitar, because now if I want to play the A major scale with power chords, I can do it using the string below. See, I'm just going open A and open E, 2A, 2E, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, okay? So now the only thing that changes is that we have a symmetrical shape. It's just the same fret. To give you all the chords, right? The only thing that changes is when you get to that seventh note where the diminished chord, power chord comes in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We have a flat 5. So instead of a power chord, we go back one. So it's kind of like the inverse, right? 11 on the A string, 10 on the E string. And then we climb together back here. Finally, we're getting to the same exact idea, but we're doing it on the higher strings, okay? And I think this is something that's really gonna help you out with playing up the neck, is using that same logic that you've probably already maybe experimented a little bit in the lower register of the guitar, but kind of doing it in the higher register of the guitar, all right? So we can go through that same thing. Whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. Open 2, 4, 5, 7, 9, 11, 12, if you commit that to memory in the key of E. You can add the fifth below by adding the same fret, right? So now I'm getting power chords, essentially. Open E and B, 2, E and 2B, 4, 5, 7, 9, flat 5, 11 E and 10 B, and then we form together, okay? So, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, back to 1, 8 being the octave, okay? So, knowing that information, we can also continue on and start here again, depending on how many frets your guitar has. Whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. Right? I ran out of real estate there. Some people have like 24 frets. They can do it again. Now, I want to talk about how we can use this in a more musical context now that we understand it. But first, I want to tell you about the sponsor of today's video. It's DistroKid. DistroKid is the #1 way to get all your music online. So now that you're going to make way better music because you have a proper understanding of the entire register of the guitar, all these notes that are now available to you, you can upload your music to DistroKid. All right? Super, super reasonably priced. I have an affiliate link in the description if you guys want to use it. It's worth it just to put your stuff out there, right? And even if it's just kind of like rough stuff that you wanted to share, it's amazing what might happen. I actually did a video 2 months ago about a song that I did with my friend Daniel, and it went viral on TikTok. It's up to over 110 million plays on TikTok, which is crazy to see that number. The cool thing about DistroKid is you have a dashboard that you can log in and you can see where the plays are coming from. I literally would not have known that one of our songs even was going viral on TikTok if DistroKid didn't like alert us. It's like, hey, 100 million streams, that's pretty cool. So they take care of all the money. They put it in a bank. You can withdraw it whenever. And yeah, DistroKid has been a huge sponsor of mine for a long time. I've also been a customer way before I even started a YouTube channel, to be honest. And just a big fan in general. So I have an affiliate link in the description if you guys want to check it out. There's a bunch of other cool things you can do. You can like submit for playlists and all that stuff. But yeah, DistroKid is really, in my opinion, the only worthy option in that, you know, music distribution kind of hustle you got going on. So thank you to them for sponsoring the video. And let's get back to using this to make some cool music, all right? So we're in the key of E. Let's talk about how maybe we can pinpoint some of these things to add to chord progressions first, right? So like, all right, we've got maybe some common chords in the key of E. E major being the one chord. I always love playing this one right here, which is an E major 7 chord. I've got an open E, 7 on the A, which is an octave E. I have 2 E's right here. It's major 3rd, and then it's major 7. So it's open E, 7, A, 6, D, 8, G. And then it's like, all right, well, maybe I want to add something to that. I can be like, all right, well, I know this symmetrical shape that doesn't even break until I get to the 11th and 10th fret. Maybe I want to just play kind of something around the area that I'm in, right? So it's like, all right, I'm in this spot of the neck. I'm used to going up here. I might know, the major scale up here. It's like, okay, I can kind of play around there by knowing a position, right? But it's like, I want to get a different vibe, so maybe I'll pinpoint. All right, I'm going to focus on just this part of the neck as I go through here. So I've got whole, whole, half, whole, whole. Oh, wow, look at this. 5 and 5, 7, 7, 9 and 9. Now I can do maybe little runs off this chord. And then because I have that open E string, I can even... And I know that a lot of the open strings are helping me out. And then like, okay, these are some interesting ideas that I'm coming up with just by knowing like where the shape is, right? And again, the symmetry of it is so easy. Like I really think that doing this is way easier than even memorizing like a hand shape. Because, you're thinking, all right, this is a pattern and I got to remember like open 2, 4, open 2, 4, 1, 2, like that. But this is just like open 2, 4, 5, 7, 9. And then even if I don't want to mess with where that flat 5 happens, I can just get down to the 12th fret, right? So now I can add that to anything I'm playing around this chord. So if I do want to maybe add some other interesting chords in this key, now I'm adding a little bit more of my chord vocabulary where I know, all right, this is the 1 chord in the key, the 2 chord is F sharp minor. I always turn that into like a minor 7 chord. Let's do that. 1, 2. Okay, so the 2nd chord, F sharp minor 7, I'm just barring the 9th fret, and then I do that classic hammer-on move, where it's ring finger 2 frets higher, middle finger 1 fret higher. And again, my middle finger, guess what? That's where that break is. So it's like all these things are starting to come together in my mind's eye, right? Again, I did that little hammer-on, and then it's like, all right, now I recognize that hammer-on as being that part of the puzzle piece, and I can back it all the way up. How do I want to, utilize that and add it to my playing? Maybe just like that. I got the little... Then I know that that's where those whole steps are. If I want to add that open E string. Right? And then now it kind of fills out the sound if you're playing by yourself, like just, unaccompanied. Now if you're playing with like a backing track or a band or something, then... you can kind of do stuff, maybe single note lines. And when it comes to single note lines, everybody learns stuff the same way, right? And that's pentatonic. So now what we're going to do is we're going to tie this into where the pentatonic scale exists, all right? So anytime you're in a key, 3 notes back behind the root key, you get minor pentatonic. So in E's case, we just back it up 3 notes, E, we're skipping the D sharp, and we're going right to the C sharp, the relative minor. And this is where that tried and true minor pentatonic shape comes. And now it's like, okay, well, I do remember when I was going from 9 to 12, that's where that pentatonic shape, those are the pentatonic notes of this. We just skip the 7th and the flat 5. Which opens up another kind of revelation. It's like, well, the pentatonic scale sounds so good all the time. It's always pleasing to your ear because we're eliminating that one thing that kind of sounds bad when you rub up against each other, that flat 5. We're just taking that out of the equation for the pentatonic scale. So now this is where that comes from, okay? Now, aside from that, the beauty of minor pentatonic is you can double stop through everything, right? I've done other videos on this, but if we just think of 9, 12, 9, 11, 9, 11, 9, 11, 9, 12, 9, 12, and we start double stopping, just playing the note behind it, you essentially end up with pentatonic power chords, 2 notes at a time, that we can add into anything we've talked about, right? So I can start here. And it's like, all right, those are 2 ideas. I started with that chord. And then I did that kind of, found my little spot right here from 5 to 9. Maybe I can do like these like super wide hammer-ons. Or I can just focus on maybe just single notes like that I think are pretty easy to do. You can have a lot of fun just like that. And then if I go to my next chord, that 2 chord, the F sharp minor that we talked about, I can just do it right there. And then now I'm in that pentatonic spot. Or I can still think of doing that 2 notes at a time, right? And I think once you really kind of ingrain in your mind's eye that these patterns exist and you can do them all over the neck, it becomes a lot easier. Like even like if you didn't know this kind of trick, essentially where it is just like attaching a 5 below to make it the same fret. If you saw somebody sit down on a guitar and they're just like, oh, you know, you'd be like, wow, that person knows what they're doing because it's a pretty fluid way to get up the entire neck, even past the octave. That sounds great, right? And I think I actually probably use it the most in my playing when it comes to like the really high stuff, just because the frets get so close together that it really sounds kind of cool if you start combining these like little double stops into it. Especially like once it gets to the half steps next to each other. Which again, here would be. And then you can always end up home here, or here, or here, or here. You just pick your E major chord, and then you do it. And like I said, all this stuff is really movable. It's very simple. If you wanted to do G, just start on a G chord, and then once you see them as symmetrical shapes, it gets a lot easier to kind of like play them as shapes because you know they're just like right next to each other, like 5, 7, 9, 5, 7, 9, 7, 9, 10, 7, 9, 10, 9, 10, 12, 9. Symmetry always helps your brain remember things, and I think looking at playing up the neck with a root note and a fifth through a scale is the absolute best way to do it, just like using DistroKid is the best way to get your music online, submit to playlists, and do a whole bunch of other goodies that they have when you sign up for the thing, because you're going to sign up with my affiliate link in the description to help your buddy Sean out. So if you have any questions or comments, hit me in the comment section, and I will talk to you soon. Later.